Hello everyone. Tonight you find yourself standing in a room so quiet you can hear the gentle tick-tick of a distant mantel clock, muffled under layers of velvet drapery and soft imperial carpeting. The air smells faintly of ink-old books and lavender water dabbed on starched collars. There's a man snoring lightly, rhythmically beneath a mountain of quilts trimmed in golden thread. His name is Napoleon Bonaparte, and he's very much not ready to wake up. You probably won't survive this. Now, before I get started, please like and subscribe to this video, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your city and your local time. I'll be checking now. Let's turn off the lights, turn on the fan, and play some soothing background music, and drive off into the night together. You're not even sure what time it is. It might be 6 a.m. or 8:30, or what the French call Napoleon Standard Time, which means whenever he feels like it. The curtains are drawn tight, stitched so thick they could block out a cannon blast. Let alone the rising sun. His valet, Louis Constant, stands beside you. He's holding a silver tray with a damp towel and a tiny spoon. You wonder briefly if that's breakfast, or a tool for stirring ambition. It's hard to tell with this crowd. Napoleon groans. Not the growl of a soldier, more like the cranky muttering of a man who never learned to enjoy sleeping, and historians agree on this one thing. He didn't like sleep much, 4 to 5 hours per night, sometimes 2. But here's the weird part. He also liked staying in bed well past sunrise if nothing urgent was happening. So yes, he hated sleep, but also clung to his pillows like they held national secrets. You tiptoe around his chamber. It's warm and still. The furniture arranged in oddly perfect symmetry, like it might get judged by a visiting duke. There's a portrait of Josephine over the desk. Her painted eyes follow you, which would be unsettling if the room weren't already weirdly peaceful. Then, Napoleon shifts. You freeze. He makes a soft noise, somewhere between a sigh and a command. And then, silence again. According to Constant's own memoirs, the emperor didn't like being spoken to first thing, or looked at, or really perceived in any way. So, your main job here is to exist very, very softly, like a feather, like a whisper, like a particularly well-behaved ghost. After another few minutes, Napoleon sits up. His hair is tousled in a charming but mildly tyrannical fashion. His undershirt is rumpled, and his expression is somewhere between battle-ready and please bring me my pants. He mumbles something in Corsican, French possibly an insult, possibly a command for socks. The valet jumps into action. You help fold. Back the heavy blankets, which have the texture of woven clouds and weigh roughly as much as a small goat. Napoleon stretches, then looks around, blinking, like someone trying to remember if they still own Spain. He doesn't say thank you. Of course not. He doesn't have time for pleasantries. He's the emperor. You're the assistant. And he needs to be vertical before the second cannon of the morning salute fires, because that's his version of a snooze button. Napoleon finally swings his legs over the side of the bed. He stands with the caution of a man who has been on too many horses and slept on too many campaign cots. His feet are small size 7 if you're wondering, but his presence feels enormous. You hand him a soft linen robe. He nods once. That's basically a royal thank you. He pads over to a water basin while Constant holds out a toothbrush. Yes, he brushed his teeth. No, he did not floss. He also used lots of it. Not the fancy spicy stuff either. Eau de Cologne from Jean-Marie Farina splashed liberally across his neck, hands, and occasionally his ankles. Why? Historians are still debating whether he thought it repelled disease or just made him smell more conqueror-why as he washes his face. He mutters a few lines from a document he was reviewing the night before, possibly a tax law, possibly an order to mobilize artillery. You're still not entirely sure which drawer he keeps his morning personality in, but he hasn't thrown anything yet, so you take it as a win. He dries off, blots his face, and grumbles. Something about the Russians, which is either a dream fragment or a pre-breakfast complaint. Hard to tell then, suddenly, he's up, awake, alert. There's a noticeable shift in the air, like someone just wound the music box of his brain and hit play. He straightens his shoulders, glances in the mirror, adjusts a stray lock of hair, and just like that, the man who ruled most of Europe in his pajamas is ready to rule it again. He wants coffee now. That's your job. He doesn't drink it strong, surprisingly. He likes it weak, in small portions, and poured into a tiny porcelain cup that looks like it belongs in a dollhouse tea party. He also prefers it tepid, not hot. One aide made it too hot once. That aide was never seen again. Okay, that's an exaggeration. He was probably reassigned, maybe to Siberia, maybe to pastry duty. The tray is ready. Coffee, roll, possibly a scrap of chicken left over from last. Night's late meal, and that's it. Napoleon did not care for rich food in the morning, or really at all. Food was fuel, and fuel, in his case, was caffeinated, mildly stale, and blessedly simple. He sips slowly, one eyebrow raised. His mind is already galloping far ahead toward battle plans, ministerial reports, maybe even Josephine's latest letter. You, meanwhile, just try not to breathe too loud. He looks at you for a second too long, then nods once. You're dismissed for now. And just like that, the sun finally reaches through a crack in the curtain, falling across the floor in a line of gold. He doesn't notice. He's already thinking of the next 10 moves. You tiptoe back, quietly impressed. The Emperor is awake. You're carrying a tray. On it sits a cup of coffee so small, so dainty, you're afraid the wind might blow it over. Or worse, that you might spill it and accidentally rewrite European history. The coffee is warm, not hot. You made absolutely sure of that. Napoleon does not like hot coffee. He also doesn't like waiting. He's already sitting at a small table near the fire, dressed now in a cream-colored shirt and half-buttoned waistcoat. He hasn't said a word to you yet. His gaze is fixed on the flames, like he's debating whether to invade them. You clear your throat softly. You don't want to startle him. That might result in war, possibly with you. You place the tray down. The saucer rattles slightly. He glances up. And there it is, the imperial nod. The man who crowned himself emperor of the French drinks his coffee like it's medicine. He sips, grimaces faintly, and mutters something about Turkish beans. Then he picks at a crusty roll. No butter, no jam, just bread. Sometimes, if he's in a lavish mood, there's a sliver of grilled chicken breast. For breakfast. Yes, you're thinking the same thing. This is the breakfast of a guy who's clearly got things to conquer by noon. You expected something grander, maybe some silver domes lifted with a flourish, steam wafting dramatically from golden plates. But this, it's a solo, silent affair. Napoleon didn't eat to indulge. He ate to not pass out. And this meal, this minimalist little gathering of caffeine and crumbs, was sometimes his only one until dinner. Historians note that Napoleon had little interest in elaborate meals, especially before major events, before coronations, battles, or meetings with czars. He often fasted. Whether it was strategy, nerves, or plain habit, no one can say for sure. Historians are still debating whether his sparse breakfasts were a sign of discipline or digestive revenge for all those campaign rations that you step back, letting him eat. The fire pops gently. Outside, carriages roll down Rue de Rivoli, hooves clacking, Paris awakening one clip-clop at a time. But inside this quiet salon, the world is held together by napkin folds and diplomatic silence. Napoleon chews slowly, wiping his mouth with precision, not messily, not absent-mindedly. Precisely, like wiping away crumbs is a form of negotiation. When he's done, he stands abruptly. You flinch. He doesn't notice. Or maybe he does, and considers it a test. He moves to the window, opens it just an inch. A gust of cool morning air sneaks in, carrying the smell of baking bread and something faintly horse-related. Napoleon breathes deeply, once, then shuts the window. Apparently, that's enough fresh air for now. He returns to the small table, but only to shuffle a few papers. His fingers move quickly, restlessly, touching objects without really holding them. A silver quill, a small bronze clock, a rolled map of Austria he never seems to unroll. You'd think, for a moment, he might actually. Forget you're here, then he speaks. The voice is low, direct, like someone who edits time for efficiency. He asks about today's appointments, battlefield updates, whether the English ambassador has responded, and Dodleif, his horse vizier, had his oats. You answer to the best of your ability. With a tone so calm and careful, it could be used in hostage negotiation. He doesn't look at you while you speak, but he hears you, every word. Now it's your job to clear the table. The bread's half-eaten, the chicken wing is untouched. You're tempted to nibble it, just to see what imperial poultry tastes like. But that's probably a firing offense. You lift the tray carefully, cradling it like it contains secret orders. It kind of does. As you exit the room, you hear Napoleon muttering again. Names, numbers, march routes. Something about Bavarians. He's no longer in the mood for a conversation or coffee. He's in motion now, even when he's standing still. Back in the small kitchen area, Constant gives you a look. Not angry, not surprised, just tired. The look of someone who's fetched 10,000 lukewarm coffees and lived to tell the tale. Leans in and whispers, just barely audible once the chicken was cold. He didn't say a word, just left, took his whole army with him. We didn't see him for 2 days. You nod solemnly. Napoleon doesn't throw tantrums. He reassigns continents. Now that breakfast is done, you follow him to the next room, the dressing chamber. You're half a step behind him, shoes silent on the polished wood. Napoleon is already talking to himself again. Something about artillery range and linen trousers. You think he's joking, but also probably not. This morning, his mood seems good, which means breakfast was acceptable, which means the Empire, for the moment, is stable. You exhale for the first time since dawn. As you carry the empty cup and saucer out of the salon, you notice a small note left on the sideboard. It's scribbled in his unmistakable handwriting, not addressed to anyone, just Second Corps move west of Dresden. Need horses. Coffee was fine. Fine. You almost smile. It's not love, it's not war, it's breakfast. And that's the closest thing to affection you're going to get from Napoleon Bonaparte. The coat is already waiting for you, draped across a mannequin like it's royalty itself. And in a way, it is. Napoleon's gray greatcoat might be the most famous piece of outerwear in history. Simple, military, wool, slightly weather-beaten, but somehow, majestic. You don't get to touch it yet. First, you help him with the Arranged by someone who probably hasn't slept since the last Prussian skirmish, the room is filled with quiet urgency. Footmen glide like ghosts. Valets move with the coordination of a ballet company that specializes in putting socks on dictators. Napoleon stands with his arms out like he's preparing for either war or a really aggressive hug. You slip the linen shirt over his shoulders, smoothing it carefully. The fabric is crisp and smells faintly of starch and a very specific lemon cologne that you now associate with strategic dominance. He doesn't flinch, doesn't fidget, doesn't even blink. It's as though his body is there, but his mind has already galloped off to Bavaria, building bridges or toppling dukes. Next, you help him into the tight, pale trousers, fastening the brass buttons along the side with trembling fingers. You're not used to this. He is. Every motion is efficient, economical like a man who's been dressed by someone else more times. Then he's tied his own shoes. Socks, shoes. Then the coat. Ah yes, the coat. You lift it carefully. It's heavier than it looks. To his most comfortable disguise, it's not the robes of a king or the gold of a general. Just gray, modest, familiar. As if to say, I'm just a soldier, one who conquered half of Europe. He straightens his sleeves, smooths the collar, then reaches over to the valet's tray and picks up a small object, a lemon. Yes, he's putting it in his pocket. Again, you blink. You've seen many strange things today, but this feels pointed. What's the lemon for? A mid-March snack, a metaphor. Did he lose a bet? Historians are still debating whether the lemons were for digestion, scurvy prevention, or just his favorite accessory. There's no record of him ever using one, but people swear he carried them often, just rolling around in the folds of his pocket. Like citrusy good luck charms, he notices your look. Hat. You hold it. Reverently, it's not just a hat, it's the hat. Broad, sideways, not worn front to back like the others. That famous silhouette, you gently offer it to him. He doesn't put it on right away. He likes to carry it for a while, letting it hang from his hand like a saber he's not quite ready to unsheathe. His medals are next. Today, he's chosen. Just to the Legion of Honor, of course. And a smaller pin you don't recognize. Something from Egypt, maybe, or possibly just decorative. Even emperors accessorize. He doesn't fuss, doesn't primp, doesn't ask how he looks. Instead, he checks the time dash. Finally, it's past 9 a.m., a late start for some. But for Napoleon, it's optimal. He believes in bursts of energy, timed. just right, he doesn't pace himself. He ignites like a cannonball, flies in a perfectly destructive arc, and lands wherever history decides to catch him. And you are just trying to survive the wardrobe change. Now fully dressed, he picks up a thin riding crop and taps it absently against his boot. Not a threat, just a habit. You're not entirely sure. It's not a tuning fork for imperial thoughts. He finally glances at you, says one word. Ready? You nod. You're not ready. You follow him into the corridor, where guards straighten instantly at the sound of his approaching steps. The scent of lemon lingers behind him like a victory parade. In the next room, aides are waiting, with papers, with dispatches, with updates from generals, ministers, and probably a distant cousin asking for money. Napoleon barely pauses before choosing which letter to open first. Through enemy lines, the coat swishes as he walks. You notice one last detail as he leans over the desk. His pocket square is folded like a tiny envelope. And inside, barely peeking out, is the corner of a small photograph. Josephine. He doesn't look at it, but he hasn't removed it either. And then, without another word, he's gone down the hall, barking names, issuing orders, moving like a man whose breakfast might have been boring, but whose day absolutely won't be. You're left in the dressing chamber, holding the hat he forgot. Or maybe he didn't forget it. Maybe he wants you to carry it now. You're walking quickly now, trying not to breathe too loudly. Napoleon is several paces ahead of you, already in full command mode. His boots make sharp, even clicks across the polished parquet floor, like a metronome set to emperor tempo. Every turn is crisp, every gesture efficient. You feel like you're chasing the world's most fast-paced chess piece. He enters the study without breaking stride. This room is different, warmer, paper-scented, lit by 3 tall windows and at least 24 half-burned candles. The desk, if you can call it that, is more like a battlefield in miniature covered with documents, maps, inkwells, and a slightly melted wax bust of Caesar. There's also a pile of sealed letters teetering in one corner, like a paper volcano. Ready to erupt, Napoleon doesn't sit right away. He rarely does. Instead, he paces in front of the desk, muttering names, cities, grain prices. You try to catch the rhythm, but it's like trying to hum along with a lightning storm. You're handed a quill. You're now his copyist. Good luck. Napoleon begins dictating, not slowly, not thoughtfully, no rapidly, like a man racing his own brain. You're scribbling as fast as you can, ink flicking off the tip in random arcs. He doesn't notice. Or maybe he does and assumes you'll adjust. He speaks in paragraphs. Whole legal arguments, tax codes, and troop orders come out fully formed, like they were marinating overnight in his sleep. His secretaries often say he could dictate to multiple people at once, shifting from one topic to another mid-breath. You're starting to believe them. He stops briefly, frowns, and rewrites his own sentence out loud, then rewrites the rewrite. He's editing while dictating a sort of literary yoga, and somehow it makes perfect sense. Today's topics include a new taxation plan for salt in southern France, naval defenses around Toulon, a letter to his brother, Lucien, who still owes him a favor, a sarcastic note to the Minister of Police, asking if any conspiracies are scheduled before dinner. That last one earns a rare smirk. You smile, too, carefully, quietly. He doesn't mind the occasional joke, as long as it's his. He finally sits. But it's not restful, it's purposeful. You can see the desk up close now. One drawer is slightly open. Inside 3 spare quills, a flask, and a single playing card, the Queen of Spades. Nobody knows why it's there. Historians are still debating whether it belonged to Josephine or if it was just a reminder that even emperors don't control every outcome. For a thick report, scans it, makes a note in the margin, hands it back with a grunt. You take it, half reading the comment, too slow. Rewrite it like you're marching uphill. You glance at the clock on the mantel. Barely an hour and filled 3 pages. Napoleon, he's barely warmed up. Now he rises again. This time, it's less a stretch and more a signal. He needs to pace. And when Napoleon paces, you follow. The study floor has a worn trail in the rug, like the path of an anxious lion. You step into it carefully. Napoleon moves quickly, folding, his arms behind his back, muttering military formations and the occasional insult toward Austria. He stops at the window. Stares, not out, exactly just through, possibly in Poland, possibly in his own head. You stand a respectful 2 steps behind, not sure whether to offer a comment or just become invisible. He turns suddenly, eyes bright, animated. He starts describing a bridge, built from hollow barrels bound by rope fastened with planks. Designed to cross rivers in less than 6 hours. You nod as if this is casual conversation. In his mind, he's already crossed it twice. You make a note. Barrel bridge. Talking. Waving a compass in the air like a wand. You try to keep up, both mentally and physically. There's something almost hypnotic about the rhythm, his cadence, the echo of boots, the soft brushing of sleeve against sleeve as he spins and pivots with the fluidity of a man who knows this. Dance by heart. It's a strange ballet. There's even music. Faintly an opera melody drifting in from another room, echoing off the stone. Napoleon hums a single note, then stops. Aide arrives, breathless letter in hand. Napoleon reads it, taps it against his thigh, says nothing. Then, move the artillery to the east bank. Confirmation. He knows you heard him. A few more minutes of pacing, then he walks over to a globe in the corner and gives it a spin knot in play, but in thought. Then shifts. Slightly Portugal, he grunts, then sits back at the desk. Another burst of dictation follows, this time about road tolls. You're suddenly in the weeds of transportation policy. You wonder if he even knows how roads get paved. He looks up, as if he read your thought. Everything is logistics. It's not a joke, not a motto, just a fact. You nod at last. He puts down the pen. The fire has dimmed. The windows are open now. Fresh air filters in, cooler than before. He doesn't seem to notice. Or maybe he finally does. He stands again, stretching this time. His voice is quiet. Lunch, a single word. An invitation. Just a destination. You follow, and the rug, still warm from his footsteps. You've barely caught your breath, your fingers still faintly stained with ink from the last memo, and now you're in the dining salon. Or, as you've come to understand it, the stage of interruptions. Lunch with Napoleon is less about eating and more about managing the chaotic orchestra of incoming dispatches, wandering generals, and very poorly timed rumors from Spain. The table is modest. No gold leaf centerpieces or overflowing fruit pyramids. Just a white cloth, a few plates, and one surprisingly fragile chair that squeaks when Napoleon sits. You know it squeaks because it does so every time. No one fixes it. Possibly out of fear. Possibly because the squeak is now considered a national landmark. He sits, fork in left hand, elbow on table. His boots don't quite tuck under heat, not particularly tall, and this furniture was made for taller men who enjoy long meals. He does not. Napoleon eats fast. Like record-breaking levels of fast, you hover nearby. Today's menu, a simple soup, boiled beef, and Yasugan pigeon pie. You don't know how many pigeons gave their lives for France, but judging by this menu, they must have had a whole squadron on the payroll. The soup is served. He takes exactly 4 spoonfuls. You count them, then sets the spoon down like it insulted his mother. The meat follows. He cuts into it absent-mindedly while reading a letter handed to him. Mid-bite, you hold your breath. This could go one of 3 ways. He ignores the letter. He finishes the meat, then storms off. He reads the letter, mutters an insult, and storms off while chewing today. It's option 3. The letter is from Marshal Ney. Something about supplies being delayed. Napoleon scowls, takes one last bite of beef, and stands chair squeaking in protest. He tucks the half-eaten pigeon pie under a napkin, muttering for later like he's declaring, "War on desert." You're left alone at the table with the ghost of lunch. The aides glance at each other. One of them shrugs, another finishes off. A roll, no one says anything. This is just how it goes. Napoleon storms back, and 2 minutes later. He forgot his fork. He grabs it, doesn't explain. Walks back out. You stare at the pigeon pie. It stares back. Eventually, someone clears the table, though Napoleon barely ate enough to count. Historians say he often skipped meals during campaigns, or at least rushed through them with such speed that even his chef gave up on trying to impress. Him, historians are still debating whether his poor eating habits were due to stress, control, or just sheer impatience with things that didn't explode by 3 p.m. He's back at his desk, but it's brief. He stands abruptly, announces bath, and disappears into his private chamber with all the gravitas of a man entering a war council. You follow now. Let's talk about the bath. It's big, ornate, porcelain lined with gold, trim, with lion paw feet and steam rising from the surface, like a curtain lifting before a very strange opera. And you get to sit nearby on a chair, holding a notepad, just in case he decides to dictate something from the tub, which he does. Often Napoleon steps in slowly, wincing a little at the temperature. He doesn't like it scalding, but warm enough to wake Caesar, as one valet once described it. He sinks down with a long sigh that sounds like a truce being signed. He's quiet for about 30 seconds. Then he starts talking. At first it's all historical. Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Hannibal crossing the Alps. Then, mid-thought, he jumps to French road taxes, something about a duchess with an ugly dog. And somehow, whether he should start using a different kind of tooth powder, you nod politely. Your pen scratches paper like a squirrel on a sugar high. The steam makes everything slightly surreal. You start to drift. Then he asks you a question. What's your opinion on decimal time? You blink. Decimal time, as you may or may not know, was a very real system briefly used during the French Revolution. 10 hours in a day, 100 minutes in an hour. It failed, miserably. You clear your throat and say something diplomatic like, "It's a bold concept, sire." He nods, satisfied. Probably not with your answer. More likely with his own brilliance. In considering it again, he leans back in the tub, eyes closed now, steam curling around his hair like a soft crown. There's a moment, just a moment, where he looks vulnerable, peaceful even. Then he startles awake. Send for the map of southern Italy. You jump, no one brings it. The moment passes. He splashes water over his shoulders and keeps muttering. You, still scribbling notes, notice his foot tapping rhythmically beneath the surface, like he's marching underwater. After about 40 minutes, he rises. You help him towel off. He's already halfway into his next speech, something about cavalry formations and grain silos while he dries behind a screen. You hear the rustle of linen, the unmistakable thump of boots. He re-emerges fully dressed again, refreshed and vibrating with purpose. He walks past you without a word, lemon back in his pocket. You follow, because up next is nap time, and that, strangely enough, might be the weirdest part of his day. Tonight, you've quietly wandered through the curious, chaotic, and caffeine-fueled daily routine of Napoleon Bonaparte. Not the battlefield general, but the man with the creaky chair, the lukewarm soup, and the deep, philosophical bathtub monologues. You began in his shadowy bedchamber, watching him rise reluctantly, grumble through dressing, and sip bitter coffee before sunrise. Then came his lightning-fast breakfast bread and more complaints, followed by the sacred ritual of buttoning, his famous coat, lemon in pocket. Hat at the ready, you sat through hours of furious dictation, dodging ink stains and military memos, before witnessing his oddly speedy lunch and pigeon pie rejection. As the emperor marched from room to room, you saw how his mind spun faster than his troops, pacing through thoughts, questioning decimal time, and muttering troop movements while soaking in a steaming gold-trimmed tub. It wasn't a day of glory or speeches. It was a day of small habits, fast bites, strange rhythms, and bursts of genius. And somehow, all of it felt oddly human. Now, slow your breath. Let your shoulders fall. Napoleon is finally taking his nap, and so should you.